When I was young, Arizona Teas released their RX Tonic series of drinks. There were originally 4: Energy, Stress, Heart, and Memory. Energy and Memory were citrusy. Heart and Stress were flavored teas. By the time I got out of high school, the selection was down to just Stress and Energy, much to my chagrin. Then it became really hard to find them in glass bottles. Now, even the cans are becoming rare, as they are found only in cheaper and cheaper plastic bottles, fewer and fewer stores. When I asked my dad why this was, he described it thusly. There are several steps to a civilization's decline in the products that you can buy. First, you get less variety. Then, you get worse quality. And then, you get scarcity. I'm sure you have all had the experience of products breaking very quickly after purchase, from toys to high-end electronics. And we all have graveyards of USB cables, don't we? And we can all swear up and down everything was made with higher quality when we were younger. My first instinct would be to defer to my minimalism and assume this reaction is just nostalgia. But if we look at documentaries and interviews with technology industrialists and economic historians, we'll hear them all mention the transition in the late 20th century to the idea of disposable technology, it being easier and cheaper to buy a new computer and throw the old one in the trash. So it seems we are not all crazy. The first and most common explanation offered for the lack of quality in today's products is where they are manufactured. There is a Russian joke, but I'm sure it works across cultures. Gandalf throws the envelope containing the One Ring into Frodo's fireplace. It warms in the flames. The wizard picks it up, using the tongs, and hands it to Frodo. He asks the hobbit, "Well, can you see anything?" Frodo replies, "Yes, made in China." And Gandalf sighs, "I was afraid so." That phrase, "made in China," has become the watchword for cheap products of ever-decreasing quality in Western markets. For all Westerners, but Americans especially, it has a special darkness, as we used to be the manufacturing capital of the world. There is both an existential fear of being displaced, as well as a very practical feeling of helplessness, as we see all the ghost towns and their attendant issues. There is no debate that the quality of product produced by the, shall we be charitable and say, organization in mainland China is substandard. The PPE, bioanalysis kits, and medicinal component crisis in the first half of 2020 displayed that quite definitively. However, that cannot be the end of the argument. After all, Arizona RX was not manufactured there, near as I can tell, and none of the products we mass purchase from the Far East were designed there. Many, in fact, do carry the explicitly pathological label, "Designed in the USA." If you're a subscriber of mine, then you may have noticed the issue I find myself worried about more than any other, the one which I blame for both my own inadequacies, as well as the issues of my society at large. That concern is the issue of the acceptance, and in some cases outright elevation, of mediocrity and its attendants. Though many of my contemporaries would disagree with this assessment, I would argue innovation has slowed dramatically. Don't get me wrong, the incredible iterative evolution of our technology over the last 40 years has had impressive and undeniable effects, some of which one could argue are even paradigm shifting. However, when zooming out to the macro scale, technology doesn't seem to have achieved a new paradigm since at least the development of the internet, capital I. In fact, that very shift seems to be itself stillborn. Old habits of consumption have changed, especially with the onset of just-in-time manufacturing, logistics, and industrial controls, and broadband streaming. Legacy organizing principles and organizations, however, have not seen a true revolution, while television, radio, libraries, bookstores, and movie theaters continue to witness a collapse in attention share. The media of the digital harvest has decided that instead of usurping the old guard, they will simply become their instruments in exchange for a seat at the establishment's kiddie table. And this is not just about my feelings. For one, I'm too autistic to have any. But in all seriousness, I brought receipts. There has been a marked and recorded decline in the achievements of our academics, especially in the realms of science. The tests the U.S. Army and Marines used to determine who should become an officer featured continually falling scores until they were abandoned in favor of simply requiring a college education. The continuing calls to lower standards of all types because the percentage of subjects who pass continues to decline. Along with these observable and measurable indicators of the rise in mediocrity as a civilizational standard, there are more narrative signs. There has been a clarion call throughout my entire lifetime to accept both ourselves and others as they are, to refuse the necessity of self-improvement. In fact, sometimes there are accusations that demands for self-improvement are unwarranted and toxic bigotry. On top of that, we are told we must all go to college, and once there, we are told we can study whatever we want. Continuously, there are new areas of academia developed under either the general or critical studies pedagogy category, whose appeal is based entirely upon the idea of attracting students who find traditional fields of study too hard, and that in these new arenas their pathos is all that matters, and rigorous, adversarial academic effort is verboten. Many of my acquaintances, unable to succeed in more valuable, more traditional concentrations, moved toward these areas. Hell, even I dropped my STEM major. When I was a boy, my parents always tried to push me toward the hard sciences and engineering. As Soviet expats, 3 generations back on each side, we had a background in STEM. I didn't think I was good enough to do all that. My mom and dad tried to push me to work on myself and become excellent in those areas. No child of theirs would not go to a top-tier university. People who didn't go to college ended up as janitors, was the common expression in our home. Now, issues with that vision of the world aside, my feelings of inadequacy and the feeling that we lived in a world safe and stable enough for me to seek easier work allowed me to feel correct in ignoring their guidance. The seemingly less precise and demanding field of filmmaking would be my goal. When this is the mindset our civilization cultivates, a seeking of comfort and ease instead of a seeking of challenge and an unending intentional drive to improve, surely the effects will not be limited to an excess of fake elites. It would be naive to think the sciences would be safe, when all standards are lowered so that we can say more people are succeeding without pushing them to actually do better. I always wondered why military equipment looks the way it does. I don't mean the camo. I don't mean that it's big, or that there are guns. I mean more specific details. There's a distinct shape to the equipment in each nation's military. If their functions are as similar as we assume they are, what reason creates such a distinct look? Maybe it's just my autism speaking again, but I just know that every line, every shape, every accoutrement, antenna, and protrusion exists for a reason. Those reasons are decisions made by engineers and soldiers. This intentionality in design includes aspects such as the obvious need for the component and the complete item to do the function it is being designed for, the need for all components to work together, and most importantly for the military, the ability to easily repair damaged or misbehaving components in an austere environment. That's war for you rebel motherfuckers. Then there are the less obvious elements of design. These parts must be interchangeable and mass-producible. And this is where we get into our original question. Why are our modern products such garbage, lasting no time at all? Besides the fact that they come from countries that wallow in mediocrity down to their core, of course. Well, if the product is not designed with intentionality, and if the machines and processes required to produce it are also not designed with intentionality, then the collation of all the little mismatches, where components and steps meet, will end up leading to shorter periods of time, before terminal collapse of the product. But how did I make that leap from a lack of intentionality in design to a civilizational lapse into mediocrity? Well, I've already said that everything is where it is for a reason. Nothing is there just because. Unless it isn't made precisely enough to be good at what it does, of course. My experience is that the practical, meaningful gap between mediocrity and exceptionalism is that intentionality. When I create, when I do my other work, I always attempt to put reasoning into every one of my decisions, because that is what work is. It's solving problems and creating value for your fellow man. It is, at the end of the day, making decisions. Otherwise, a machine could do it, right? And pushing oneself to put in the effort to do full, rational reasoning in one's decisions, using intentionality in one's work. That's how we rise above mediocrity. Note that this week's video comes after 2 weeks of looking at paragons in art. There's intentionality there too. Why do I insist we need our paragons in art? Because the paragons, especially in the art for our youths, are the second best way, outside of the family of course, to engage us to do better, to give us a standard to aim for. The regimental colors always lead the formation after all. Good paragons will remind us to use intentionality, to make decisions, to make the world we live in, and to plant trees under whose shade we will never sit. And as important as art is, it's even more important that I get a USB cable that doesn't fray in 5 seconds, or a car I can rely on, or an office building that doesn't require constant scaffolding so its facade doesn't kill me as I walk under it. Inspire your mind, your ass will follow. But what do you think? Next week, I'll talk about why I love exploring the halo in, well, Halo. Don't worry, there's an appropriate partner video to follow the week after that. Intentionally hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more stern rants. Share with your battle buddies. And have a great day.